Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is a little bit later. We start each one of our classes with meditation because this individual who we refer to as the Buddha figured out 2,500 years ago how to get to enlightenment, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You can get to a point where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that can be eliminated from the mind through training the mind. And meditation is an important component of that, but you need more than just meditation. So that's why after our meditation, I'm going to share some teachings with you guys to help you understand the path to enlightenment. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start this is with some chanting. And I have chanting sheets over there on the cabinet that you're welcome to help yourself to, and you can actually chant along if you like. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to help them commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing those kinds of things, those aren't his actual teachings. Instead, he's teaching you to train your mind. So we don't need chanting today in order to be able to remember the teachings. So we use it as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. If you end up getting one of those sheets, you're going to see the English translations of the chants. And these English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death. Because the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and said, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. This would be ego or arrogance. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have that in your mind anymore. So he wouldn't have created these chants and asked his students to chant them to him. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think that these actually came from his students, either during his life or after his death. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance, or I'm essentially going to be teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and everybody online who's joining will just all be meditating. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. That if you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence and you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. This is why you can eliminate these discontent feelings, because it's actually your own mind that's causing them. Oftentimes people think the anger and the frustration is being caused by other people or external things, but it's actually being caused by your own mind. It's physically impossible for someone to insert a feeling into your mind. It's actually being caused by your mind itself. So if you're in meditation, understanding that the world is impermanent and everything around you is constantly changing, you can be at ease and understand when you hear that sound, that's normal. It's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. So there's going to be this period of time of quietness, but you will hear occasional sounds. Then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand some of the teachings of the Buddha. And then in terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment, because it's kind of like having a tool belt, and you would use these different tools at different times. Oftentimes people are learning in the seated position, so I'll give you guys a little bit of guidance on this to help you get started, but then there's opportunities for you guys to learn these other positions at other times. So in terms of your seated position, you can sit however you like. There's not just one fixed way to sit. The things that I'm going to share with you are just recommendations or suggestions that you might consider, and you can use something that I'm sharing, or you can figure out something on your own. If there was just one way to sit, that would be permanence, and we don't live in that world. Different people are going to find different things to be comfortable. So you sit however you're comfortable, whether you're on the floor, in a chair, maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair, you can sit however you like. But if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, this can impede the circulation in the lower body and cause pain. Some people like to put the legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. The same thing's true for anybody who's in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you like too. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed. So this is an option as well. And then the same thing with the hands and the arms, you would like to put those wherever you like, if you're in a chair or a bench or anything like that. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. It'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you are really rigid with the upper body, your mind would be overactive or uptight. So you'd like to be in the middle with your sternum up and your shoulders back, where you can easily breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, and it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert as you're meditating. So again, I'm going to chant on the way in here. You guys are welcome to join in. Remember, it's not a prayer, it's not a ritual. It's a way to help you to ease your mind into meditation. And then I'll come back in to guide you in meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Bhutang Mahakewanang Aphivateyami Savakato Mahakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. You have nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakevanang Abhivateyami Savakato Mahakevata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Savaka Sankho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakeva Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vicacaranang Samuno Sakatoro Kawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusrang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a primary component that's going to help you to be able to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. But this isn't the only thing that you would need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. Sometimes people think that the Buddha sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. The Buddha took 6 years to get to enlightenment. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that led to his enlightenment. So there is meditation that you need to learn. There's actually 4 different types of meditation that the Buddha taught, but there's other things that he taught as well besides meditation. So what we do in this program and in all the other courses and retreats that I share is I help you guys to be able to understand the teachings of the Buddha, because you need to be able to train your mind through these teachings. The teachings of the Buddha aren't something that you would believe in. It's something that you learn, you investigate and examine intellectually. You then reflect on those teachings to be able to verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and training your mind. The teachings of the Buddha aren't rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. It's not rules and commandments of somebody telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing in your life. Instead, it's about learning, growing, and developing, becoming a better and better person through cultivating wisdom about the world around you. So his teachings aren't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's about learning and growing and developing in this life, getting to a wonderful life now in this life. So there's various teachings that you're going to need in order to be able to gradually progress on this path. And we have various programs, like on Sunday and Wednesday, we have something called our group learning program, where I go chapter by chapter in this book each Sunday. This is the first book of our book series, where I go chapter by chapter. This Sunday, tomorrow, I'm going to be in chapter 14, which is titled Cultivating Healthy Mental States, Loving Kindness, Compassion, Sympathetic Joy, and Equanimity. These are 4 healthy mental states that are eliminating certain symptoms in your mind. Oftentimes, the Buddha gets the reputation of being like a doctor, where there are certain symptoms in your mind, and then he applies a certain prescription in order to be able to remedy that. Well, you are your own best doctor. If you understand what the symptoms are and the remedies, you can actually apply these yourself. So I'm going to be teaching that tomorrow. And though I teach in kind of a more traditional style, where I'll teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions, teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions and things like that. We have various courses and stuff like this that help you to really build a foundation in the path to enlightenment. Then there's this program, which is called the Pali Canon in English Study Group. What the Pali Canon is 45 volumes of books that are about this thick. This is the original teachings of the Buddha. That's the largest, most complete collection we have of his teachings. And this book series that I share, what we've done is we've consolidated it into 13 books. And on Saturdays, I explore volumes 2 through 13. And it takes about a year and a half to go all the way through the entire book series. And today we're actually starting volume 4, but we do this more as a study group as opposed to a traditional way of learning. So oftentimes students have learned a foundation before they've come into this program, but oftentimes brand new people will show up here too. That's fine. You're going to learn plenty today, but just understand this isn't typically where someone will start. Instead, there's like the group learning program, there's the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course, there's a whole bunch of other options for you to be able to learn. So the way that we do this program is, what I do is I invite students here at the temple and anybody who's joining through Zoom to be able to read a chapter. This is actually a chapter in this book series. You can see it's only basically 2 sentences, 2 paragraphs here. These are the words of the Buddha. And then this is a reference that takes you back to the Pali Canon so you can see where that came from. And then you've got words from me that are helping you understand how to integrate this into your day-to-day life and how to glean benefit from it to be able to actually experience getting closer and closer to enlightenment. So what we do in this program is I invite students here to be able to read this chapter. And then after someone reads the chapter, I will share teachings on that. And then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to that particular chapter. So I'll show you guys how this works. If you'd like to read here, if you're at the temple, we have microphones in the middle of the room there. We have some up here as well. If you could just get a microphone and press the gray button, you'll see the lights come on. You just hold it up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then for anybody who's in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, if you have a question, you can actually put that in your comments section. If you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. And once you get these microphones, you can keep them with you because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question and you can just share it with them. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be helpful so we don't get feedback through the speakers. So is there someone here or anybody online who would like to volunteer to read this first chapter? Yeah, Rachel? Okay. There's a couple other people thinking about it, I think. I saw a couple people. Usually the mind's a little bit shy when you're in the unenlightened state. You can eliminate that, though.
A small amount of existence is not praiseworthy. Monks, just as even a small amount of feces is foul-smelling, so too I do not praise even a small amount of existence, even for a mere finger snap. Monks, just as even a small amount of urine is foul-smelling, a small amount of saliva is foul-smelling, a small amount of pus is foul-smelling, a small amount of blood is foul-smelling, so too I do not praise even a small amount of existence, even for a mere finger snap.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So I'll explain to you guys what the Buddha is teaching you here, is that if you exist in the world, meaning if there's birth, That means there's going to be sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. This isn't a pessimistic view. Sometimes when people hear about this, they're like, whoa, there's such a pessimistic view. I thought the Buddha was more positive than that. Well, what he's helping you to be able to see is true reality, is that if you're born into the world, your mind is born into this world with certain pollutions in the mind. And when you have these certain pollutions in the unenlightened state, life can seem pretty difficult. It can be somewhat miserable sometimes in life. But getting to enlightenment is just the opposite of that. Getting to enlightenment, once you get to enlightenment, life is wonderful. Life is so peaceful and joyful. There's never any problems in your life. You have certain things that you do each day. There's certain challenges that you meet, but everything's at ease. Everything's really blossoming in your life. There's nothing about your life that you would actually change by the time you get to enlightenment. Everything's going wonderful. But in the unenlightened state, if there's birth, meaning you're coming into this world, you're going to experience sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Getting to enlightenment, you're experiencing just the opposite of that. You're experiencing peace and calm, serenity, contentedness, and joy. You're having focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory in your mind. All your relationships are really blossoming. You have harmony in all your relationships. It's not even possible to experience a bad mood by the time you get to enlightenment. All the causes and conditions that are producing that have been uprooted. So what the Buddha is saying here is that he doesn't praise coming back into the world and experiencing existence over and over and over and over again. And the reason why this is important to understand is that there's some places in the world that have grossly misunderstood his teachings. There's many places that will tell you that the goal is to be in the world and exist in the world and come back into the world over and over and over and over and over again. And sometimes people even have you take vows that you're going to come back into the world again in order to help others to be able to get to enlightenment. And while that sounds very interesting to be able to help others get to enlightenment, that's a wonderful thing to be able to do. You wouldn't be able to actually help other people get to enlightenment until you've got to enlightenment yourself. So this helps you to be able to see what the Buddha's teaching is, that coming into the world through birth means that what he's saying here is it's foul smelling. He doesn't praise that because it's going to produce sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Instead, the ultimate goal is to train your mind, uproot pollutions out of your mind, get to enlightenment in this life where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful. And having done so, then there won't be a future existence. As you guys heard me share, all the teachings of the Buddha can be independently verified. There's no belief here. The Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth and that you're being reborn multiple times, but this isn't something you should believe. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. You have no evidence whatsoever other than the fact that right now you might not be able to remember your past lives. But all these teachings can be independently verified, including the cycle of rebirth. You can independently verify this. In this book series, there's 17 different criteria that you can actually independently verify this cycle of rebirth. And oftentimes when people are training their mind and they're lifting this pollution out of the mind, they can actually observe and notice their past lives. So if you're believing something, you don't know whether it's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. And that's not what's going to lead to enlightenment. You need to be able to get to wisdom. So this cycle of rebirth that the Buddha taught when you're first getting started on the path, I suggest you just set it to the side because it doesn't really matter right now. There's core central teachings that you need to be able to learn and understand in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. But ultimately, at some point, you will be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth as you cultivate that wisdom. So this is volume 4, right? Normally students have learned a whole lot of other things by the time they get to these types of teachings. And the way to independently verify the cycle of rebirth is in volume 11 of our book series, and it's in chapter 105. It's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because that's a more proper time to be able to approach the cycle of rebirth. But just understand this here, that the Buddha is explaining that coming into existence is not something that's praiseworthy, because you're going to hear a lot of people in other places that will tell you that the Buddha taught to come back into the world and experience life over and over and over again. But this is one of the beauties about studying with the original words of the Buddha, is that you can see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. Because Because you might think that everybody studies with the original words of the Buddha. Every ordained practitioner, there's about 500 million people that consider themselves to be Buddhist. Very, 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 very few of them actually study with the original words of the Buddha, because they're in 45 volumes that are this thick, and most people don't even have access to it. I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one temple that shares the original words of the Buddha. If you do the math on that, that's less than 1%. So the vast majority of the world at this point in time don't have access and aren't actually studying the original words of the Buddha to be able to see for themselves. So if you're interested in understanding what the Buddha taught and getting to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful, you're going to need to study the original words of the Buddha. And that's what you're learning here as part of this book series. And you can see for yourself what the Buddha actually taught here, that it's not about coming back into the world over and over and over again. It's about training your mind, getting to enlightenment, purifying your mind, experience peace and joy, and then you're not going to be coming back to exist over and over and over again, because if there's birth, there's sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Okay, so any questions on this chapter here? Just a short little chapter. Remember, for those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions. All right, so let's go to the next one. I'll show you some more here of the teachings of the Buddha. This is chapter 2. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Yes, ma'am. Would you like a microphone? Yeah. I think the mic's not on yet. You just need to press there's a gray button there. You'll see the lights come on. There you go.
One who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Monks, one who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Consciousness, monks, while standing, might stand engaged with form, based upon form, established upon form. With a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with feeling, based upon feeling, established upon feeling. With a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with perception, based upon perception, established upon perception. With a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might standing engaged with volitional formations, choices, decisions, based upon volitional formations, established upon volitional formations. With a sprinkling of excitement, it might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Monks, though someone might say, separated from form, separated from feeling, separated from perception, separated from volitional formation, I will make known the coming and going, its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase, and expansion is impossible. Monks, if a monk has abandoned desire for the form aggregate, with the abandoning of craving, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishment of consciousness. If he has a desire for the feeling aggregate, for the perception aggregate, for the volitional formations, choices, decisions aggregate, for the consciousness aggregate, with the abandoning of craving, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When that consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth, non-generative, the mind is liberated. By being liberated, the mind is steady. By being steady, the mind is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personally attains enlightenment. One understands destroyed is birth, The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of existence.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right. So this is where it's helpful to have a dedicated practitioner and teacher to guide you through the teachings of the Buddha. You are your own independent practitioner that is looking to cultivate wisdom. What a teacher is like a tour guide. We're pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand in order to be able to progress on the path to enlightenment. But it's you that's doing the work to learn and grow and develop on this path. So it helps to have someone that can guide you, that has understood the teachings and can help you to be able to understand. But then you don't believe what it is that I'm sharing, what I'm writing in books, what I'm talking about. You need to be able to independently verify what is actually being taught. That's how you cultivate wisdom. By learning, growing, and developing, you can actually progress towards enlightenment. So you learn the teachings, you reflect to independently verify them, and then you practice them. So here, what the Buddha is talking about is one who is engaged is unliberated, one who is disengaged is liberated. What unliberated is when you're unenlightened, that your mind is all bound up. Liberation means freedom. So if you're unliberated, that means you're not free, right? So when the Buddha describes the unenlightened state, he talks about it as not being free. Because when you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again, you're not free. Your mind's all bound up, that it feels quite miserable for you to experience guilt and shame and fear and stress and anxiety and all these other feelings. But one who is disengaged is liberated. Liberation is freedom, right? Where this comes about is that when the Buddha describes these 10 individual pollutions in the mind that need to be uprooted in order to be able to get to enlightenment, he describes them as fetters. What a fetter is during his lifetime, if you were someone they were trying to keep confined to a certain area, they would put a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and they would keep you out in a field. Where today we put these types of people in jail cells or prison cells. That's how we keep those types of people confined. Where during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would put a fetter around your ankle, a shackle and a chain and a ball. So when he describes these fetters or these pollutions of the mind, he refers to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped. It's not free. It's continuing to experience anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. But when you release those fetters out of the mind, when you eliminate the pollutions out of the mind, it's just like releasing the shackle off the ankle of the prisoner is now free. They are now liberated. The same thing is true about the mind, that once you get to enlightenment, having eliminated all those pollutions out of the mind is now free. It's liberated. So he's saying one who is engaged is unliberated, one who is disengaged is liberated. What he means here by engaged is his core teaching is about craving, desire, attachment, the mind's longing, yearning. This is what's actually causing your anger and sadness and frustration, is that your mind craves permanence, wanting and expecting things to be a certain way in the world. And if the mind gets what it wants and what it expects, you experience pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, or elation. But if you don't get what you want, your mind experiences anger, sadness, frustration, or some other discontent feeling. You can think about this through your own life. Think about when we were children. We would go to our parents and would say, "Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream?" And they're like, "Sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream." And we were so happy. We were like, "Yay, we got chocolate and ice cream." And then the second day came around and we were like, "Mommy and Daddy, can we have chocolate and ice cream?" And they're like, "Sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream." And we're like, "Thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're the best Mommy and Daddy ever." But then the third day came around and we were like, "Mommy and Daddy, can we have chocolate and ice cream?" And they said no. And we were like, "You're so mean. You're the worst Mommy and Daddy ever," right? Well, Mom and Dad wasn't the one who was causing the anger and frustration. It was our own mind, because it was only when our craving was fulfilled, when we got what we wanted and what we expected, that we experienced happiness. But when you don't get what you want and what you expect, you experience anger, sadness, and frustration in others. So when the mind is engaged, meaning it's longing, yearning, it's engaged and it's wanting that chocolate and ice cream, you're not liberated. You're tied to that chocolate and ice cream, and you can only be happy if you get it. But when you're disengaged, that means you're liberated. It's like, yeah, I can eat chocolate and ice cream, and that'd be wonderful. But if I don't eat chocolate and ice cream, that's fine too. You can maintain your peace. You can maintain your joy. That's where you're at right now. But when we were little kids, it wasn't like that. Our mind was craving that chocolate and ice cream. We really wanted that. So you need to be able to disengage the mind. You need to be able to let go. That's what that meditation was doing that we were just doing this morning, is that when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you're letting go, that's training your mind to disengage, to be able to let go, that you're not holding on. Because as long as you hold on and you crave permanence, you're going to experience anger and sadness and frustration over and over and over again. Think about when you got together with a boyfriend or girlfriend. When you guys first got together, you were so happy and so excited. But when you guys broke up, you were angry or sad or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. This wasn't your love that was causing that. That was your mind holding on and craving permanence. As long as this person was in your life, you're getting what you wanted and you were happy. But when you weren't getting what you wanted, which was that permanence, that person to be in your life, you were angry or frustrated. Or think about if you had a brand new car and you were so happy when you got this brand new car, but you took it and drove it to the store, you parked it and you went inside. And if you come outside and there's a scratch on your car, you might be angry or frustrated. That's because the mind's craving permanence. This car can't be permanently beautiful. It's not possible. It's not the scratch that's causing the anger. It's not the person who scratched your car. It's the mind craving permanence. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because when we walk through a parking lot, of course, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. But the fact is that this car is going to deteriorate because everything around you is impermanent. But the mind lacks the wisdom of that. Every single thing you see, everything you hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through your mind, it's all temporary. It's impermanent. But the mind craves permanence. So the mind will hold on to this relationship, or it'll hold on to this car, craving permanence, or it'll hold on to that chocolate and ice cream, and it'll want chocolate and ice cream every single day when we're a little kid. And we can only be happy when we get what we want. That's because the mind is engaged. And the mind is unliberated. It's not free. But when you train your mind to let go and understand that sometimes you're going to have chocolate and ice cream and sometimes you're not. Sometimes your car is going to look beautiful and sometimes it's going to be faded and the paint's going to fade and you're not going to be able to have a nice, beautiful, shiny car, right? Sometimes you're going to be in a relationship with someone and sometimes you're not. That's normal. Even if you meet a partner today and you guys are together for the rest of your life, eventually you guys are going to die. And one of you guys are going to die and the other one's going to die later and you guys aren't going to be together anymore. This relationship is impermanent. But if you crave permanence, you can only be happy when you get what you want, right? So the Buddha is bringing this to your attention in his other teachings. And now here, he's actually going into it a little bit deeper. He's saying one who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Consciousness, monks, what consciousness is the mind itself, right? So he's saying the mind, while standing, might stand engaged with form, based upon form, established in form. What he means by form is this physical form. What he's going to start talking about here is called the 5 aggregates. These are the 5 criteria of what make a living being a living being. And what you will tend to do is you will tend to cling to this physical form, wanting it to be permanent. This is why if you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that, that was you clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent, when in reality, it's not permanent. The mind could only be happy when you were getting what you wanted, which was maybe this youthful appearance. But when you see a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole or some other thing, now you're shaken up because this body doesn't look the way you want it to look. This body is not permanent. It's going to change over time, but the mind craves permanence. So that's what he's saying here, that someone might stand engaged with this physical form, clinging to it, wanting it to be permanent, with a sprinkling of excitement. Like when we're younger and we see that youthful appearance, maybe we're so happy and excited. I don't know about you guys, but when I was young, I used to get out gel and mousse and I'd run it through my hair and I'd try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot. And I couldn't go to school until every hair was in exactly the right spot. And sometimes I did this for so long, I would miss the school bus on the way to school, right? So maybe you had similar experiences. Maybe you stood in front of the mirror and you looked at your clothes and you're like, no, that's not how I want to look today. Maybe you put on another set of clothes and you're like, no, that's not it. And you put on a third set and you're like, all right, finally, I feel good to go outside. This is because you're engaged with this physical form, wanting wanting others to perceive you a certain way. And you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. This is why if you go out to a social event and you spill something on your clothing, you feel embarrassed, because your mind is clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent and wanting others to view you a certain way. And you can get rid of this. You can understand that this body is not permanent. You're going to get wrinkles. You're going to get moles. You're going to get pimples. You're going to get gray hair. You're going to lose your hair. You're going to get bigger, maybe. You're going to get smaller. You're going to get taller. You're going to get shorter. This is all impermanence. It's just change. But the mind craves permanence. So this is the first one where he's saying this excitement, it might come to grow, increase, and expand in the mind. So if you allow your mind to get so excited when you look youthful, that means you can only be happy when you look youthful. So that means when you get older, you're going to feel frustrated and angry and irritated. And you just got to understand there's a middle way here. Whereas if you hold on to this body and crave for it to be permanent, you're not going to be happy there because it's going to change. But if you were all the way on the other side, where you could care less about this body and you didn't do anything to take care of it, you're not going to experience peace and joy there either. There's a middle way, where you understand to take care of this body. Maybe you eat certain foods, you hydrate with water, maybe you do some exercise and things like this, but you also understand it's changing, that this body is going to change. No matter how well you take care of it, it's constantly deteriorating, right? And you just need to be able to understand that. So that way you're not upset and angry and frustrated when you experience all this change. So this excitement might actually expand and increase in the mind. And then he's saying the same thing about feelings, that sometimes when you have a certain feeling, like you're happy or you're sad, you might stay engaged with this feeling and hold on to it and cling to it, thinking that this is who you are. And then there's perceptions, which your perceptions are your views and opinions about the world that may or may not even be true. Oftentimes people cling to this. Like maybe if you have certain political views, you might cling to those political views. And now when you're engaged with those and you get excited about what you think about the world, you might try to convince other people to think the same way as you. And now you argue and you're upset and you're angry and you have conflict in your relationships because people don't agree with you. This is the mind craving permanence. The mind wants everybody to agree with you. And then when they don't agree with you and they don't have the same perceptions as you, you get angry and frustrated and maybe even bitter and harsh and hostile with them. Then there's something called volitional formations. These are choices and decisions. You can actually cling to these as well or stand engaged with these. So let's just say, for example, you're planning to go to Australia and it's like 6 months from now. And you've planned this trip, you've taken off time from work, you've been saving some money and things like this. But now let's just say like a month before you're planning to go, there's been some financial situation where you've had to use your money that you were going to use for the trip, but you used it for something else instead. And now maybe you're clinging to this decision to go to Australia and you're not interested and you're not willing to let it go. And now you're putting all this pressure on yourself to go on this trip. And now you feel like, oh, if I stay home, my friends, I've already told everybody I'm leaving and now I'm going to look like I'm a loser and people won't understand that I don't have money and I don't want to tell people I don't have money. So maybe you end up spending all this money on your credit card and going into massive amount of debt just to be able to go on this trip to Australia, where what you may have chosen to do, which could have potentially been wiser, is to just let go and realize, you know what, I had planned to go to Australia, but now I can't do it. And you know what, sure, I'm going to lose my $150 or whatever it is that you're going to lose with your non-refundable ticket or whatever, and you just cancel that. Your mind's unwilling to do that because you're holding on to this decision, this choice and decision that you made. Or maybe a choice and decision about a certain life partner. Maybe you're holding on to that really tightly and you're unwilling to let go of your relationships or things like that. So these are choices and decisions that someone can hold on to because they're experiencing this certain amount of excitement, these conditional pleasant feelings, and the mind's unwilling to let go of a certain decision. Then what the Buddha is saying here is, separated from these things, if someone says that they're going to make known the coming and going and the passing away and the rebirth of how beings come into this world, he's saying it's impossible for you to understand the constant cycle of rebirth by just being separated from these things. Sometimes people think that you need to, say, for example, like go live in a cave somewhere and just be separated from everything. And that's what's going to actually lead to enlightenment. And this isn't actually true. That's what the Buddha is saying here. It's impossible to know about the cycle of rebirth and the coming and going of consciousness just by being separated from these things. Instead, what you need to do is you need to abandon the desire. What it means to abandon the desire is you eliminate the longing, yearning within your mind. So in order to get to enlightenment, you don't need to eliminate the mobile phone, for example. You don't need to eliminate your relationships. You don't need to eliminate the fact that you have a computer or you have other material possessions. What you need to eliminate is the mind's craving for permanence and wanting these things to be permanent, training your mind to understand that they are impermanent. That's what he's saying here. He says you need to abandon the desire for this form aggregate, this physical form. So don't abandon the idea that you need to take care of it, but abandon the desire to long and yearn and crave for it to be permanent. That's what you need to eliminate and abandon. You need to abandon this craving, cut it off, right? So that there's no more support for the establishing of consciousness, because craving, desire, attachment not only leads to discontentedness, that's what's producing the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, but that's also the same cause and condition that's producing rebirth. That when a being is reborn into the world, it's because of craving, desire, attachment. One of the ways you can think about this is that if you had a fire with logs on it, the logs are the fuel. And as long as there's logs on this fire and there's flames on the fire, it's going to be sending sparks off into the air. And as these sparks go off into the air and they land, they're going to light a new fire. It's not the same fire as before. It's a brand new fire, but it came from the fuel from the previous fire, that spark. So the craving, desire, attachment that's in a person's mind, that's the fuel that leads to the next fire or the next mind. Because when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, the mind's holding on. The mind's holding on to this world, for example. It doesn't want to let go. So that's why the mind keeps coming back over and over and over again. But when you can train your mind to let go and understand that this life is not permanent, and you can get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful, you've abandoned the craving. Your mind's no longer longing, yearning, and holding on. And that's where you're liberated. That's where you're free. So that's what he's saying, is that you need to abandon this longing, yearning. And that's what's ultimately going to lead to liberation. When consciousness is unestablished, meaning that there's no consciousness coming back into the world, not coming to growth, non-generative, the mind is liberated, the mind is free. And this is where the Buddha is just giving a short little description of enlightenment. This is important as well, because some people will tell you that the Buddha never described what enlightenment is. This isn't actually true. You can see it in his own words. By being liberated, meaning the mind is free, the mind is steady. The mind is steady, stable, unshakable in the unenlightened state. There's nothing that can shake up your mind. Being steady, the mind is content, completely satisfied. You're inwardly satisfied. Being content, one is not agitated. You no longer experience agitation, frustration, annoyance, even the slightest dislike. The mind doesn't have that. Being unagitated, one personally attains nibbana. This is the Pali word of how to say the word enlightenment. And now once you get to enlightenment, one understands destroyed is birth, that once you get to enlightenment, you're not coming back into the world. There's actually a teaching that the Buddha has called dependent origination, which shows you the 12 interlinking steps of exactly how you keep coming back into the world over and over and over again. This is a teaching that you can independently verify and see for yourself of why you keep coming back into the world over and over again. And by the time you've gotten to enlightenment, you've independently verified that. So you will know that having gotten to enlightenment, your mind is peaceful for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You're not experiencing any anger, any sadness, any frustration. You'll know your mind's enlightened. And at the same time, you'll know that you have destroyed birth. That's what the Buddha is saying. You will know that you're not coming back into the world ever again. And you have lived the holy life, meaning you've purified your mind. What had to be done has been done. You've done this training. You've done what you needed to do. You've learned all the wisdom about this world, and now you're not going to come back over and over and over again to experience sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. There is no more for this state of existence. You're not coming back to exist in the world to experience that sorrow and despair over and over and over again. Your mind is now liberated. So if somebody got to enlightenment, say at the age of 20 or 25 or 30 or 40 or 50, they will live the rest of their life in that enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. And you'll know that your mind's enlightened. All your relationships will be going wonderful. Your mind's completely at ease at that point. And you'll know that you're no longer coming back over and over and over again. Okay, so this is kind of a deeper teaching, and that's why usually students have already had a foundation before they come into this particular program. But perhaps you could glean a little bit of information here to help you. Do you guys have any questions on this particular chapter? Anything you'd like to ask? No questions? Okay, let me see if we have anything online here. Okay, I don't see any questions online. So let's maybe do one more, and then we'll just kind of call it a day. Let's see what this next chapter is. Okay, this is chapter 3. Would someone like to read this one? Yes, ma'am.
One dealing with craving as a partner. Vulnerable says, in what way is one dealing with a partner? There are migdala forms recognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk seeks excitement in them, welcomes them, and remains holding to them, excitement arises. When there is excitement, there is obsession of mind. When there is obsession of mind, there is bondage. Bound by fetter of sensual desire, migdala, a monk is called one dealing with a partner. There are migdala sounds recognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors recognizable by the tongue, physical objects recognizable by the body, mental objects recognizable by the mind that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk seeks excitement in them, he is called one dealing with a partner. Migdala, even though a monk who thus resorts to forests and groves, to remote lodgings where there are few sounds and little noise, unoccupied, hidden from people, appropriate for seclusion, he is still called one dealing with a partner. For what reason? Because craving is his partner, and he has not abandoned it. Therefore he is called one dealing with a partner. Vulnerable says, in what way is one a lone dweller? There are migdala, forms recognizable by the eye that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. Wait a minute. If a monk does not seek excitement in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, excitement is eliminated. When there is no excitement, there is no obsession of mind. When there is no obsession of mind, there is no bondage. Released from the fetter of sensual desire, migdala, a monk is called a lone dweller. There are migdala, sounds recognizable by the ear, odors recognizable by the nose, flavors recognizable by the tongue, physical objects recognizable by the body, mental objects recognizable by the mind, they are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, tempting. If a monk does not seek excitement in them, he is called a lonely dweller. Megajala, even though a monk who thus lives in the vicinity of a village, associating with male and female adorned practitioners, with a male and female household practitioners, with kings and royal ministers, with sectarian teachers and their disciplines, he is still called a lonely dweller. For what reason? Because craving is his partner, and he has abandoned it. Therefore, he is called a lone dweller.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yeah. So here the Buddha is talking about craving being a partner. Essentially, it's like carrying around a burden on your shoulders, because when you have craving, desire, attachment, where your mind's longing, yearning, you can only be happy when you get what you want. And this is like a partner, and it's almost like a monster. You're feeding this monster, right? So if you get really happy, like say there's a certain amount of money that you want, right? And you have this amount of money. Well, if you have craving, desire, attachment, where you're longing, yearning for this money, you will fight and fight and fight and fight and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. And when you get up here, you'll finally get what you want, and you'll be happy and excited about that. But then you know what happens with the mind? It says, I want more. And now you'll fight and fight and fight and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase and chase. And then you'll say, okay, I'm happy, maybe for a week or two or a month or two. And you'll say, I want more, right? And it's like an unquenchable thirst where your mind's constantly chasing. That's the partner. That's the burden that the mind is carrying around. And what the Buddha is saying here is that there's certain forms that are desirable, lovely, agreeable, pleasing, sensually enticing, and tempting. What he's saying by forms is things that you see with the eye, right? So say you see you go to a restaurant and you see a piece of chocolate cake in the window, and it's like, oh my gosh, that chocolate cake looks so good. It looks so delicious. It's so tempting, right? And now maybe you seek excitement in that. You welcome it and you remain holding to it. Maybe you go into the restaurant and you smell the cake, and maybe you even eat the cake and you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a good piece of cake. I can't wait to come back here again and eat this cake again. And now you've been thinking about it almost obsessively. That's what he's talking about. When there's excitement in the mind, there's obsession, right? That maybe for the next several days, maybe for the week or two, you're just longing, yearning in your mind, and you just can't wait to get back to that restaurant to eat that piece of chocolate cake. And if you go back to the restaurant and they have your chocolate cake, you'll be really happy and excited. But if you walk in and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, sir. We don't have that chocolate cake today. We're out. You'll be angry, you'll be frustrated, you'll be irritated, because that obsession of the mind. So this is the partner that you're dwelling with. It's like a monster that you have to constantly feed this monster's cravings, desires, attachments. So that's why the Buddha calls it, this is one who's dwelling with a partner. But when you get to the point where you no longer have that, where you've abandoned this craving, desire, attachment, then you no longer have that. You are a lone dweller, that the mind can be completely content with the chocolate cake or without the chocolate cake, that you don't have to have that piece of chocolate cake in order to be happy, that you can have the chocolate cake and you can enjoy it, but your mind's not longing, yearning for it. You're not obsessed by it. That's what the Buddha is saying here by he says, if a monk does not seek excitement in them, does not welcome them, and does not remain holding to them, excitement is eliminated. What he's talking about excitement here is conditional excitement. Sometimes when people hear about elimination of excitement in order to get to enlightenment, people are like, I'm not sure if I'm interested to get to enlightenment, because that's probably what you live for, is excitement. But what the Buddha is talking about here is conditional excitement, where you can only be excited if certain conditions are met. You can only be happy if certain conditions are met. It's like if my mom and dad do this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my bank account is this, if my boss does this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, if the weather is like this, then I'll be excited, then I'll be happy. But if those things aren't true, then the mind is sad or frustrated or angry. So essentially, that's the mind being bound up. It's unliberated. It's unfree. So you can only be happy if these certain things are met. So your happiness is shrinking. That's why some people are old and grumpy or old and irritable. Not everybody's old and grumpy, but there's some people who are old and grumpy because they have all these conditions that have to be met in order for them to be happy. And there's so many conditions that the likelihood of all those things being true is very unlikely. So that's why they walk around old and grumpy and miserable and not experiencing joy. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is get rid of conditional excitement, that you can only be happy if certain conditions are met. He's teaching you to get to a point where you have unconditional happiness, unconditional joy, where there doesn't need to be any condition met to be joyful. So for example, an unenlightened being, they'll wake up in the morning, they'll see it's sunny outside, and they'll get so happy and they'll get so excited. They're like, yay, I'm going to go hiking today. Oh, I just can't wait to go hiking. I've been wanting to go on this hiking trail for a long time. And then they'll go take a shower and they'll come out and they'll see that it's raining and they'll be sad or frustrated. So if you allow your mind to get happy because it's sunny, or you get excited because it's sunny, that's conditional excitement, that you can only be excited as long as it's sunny. Well, the sun's not permanent. So that means as soon as the sun goes away, you're not happy anymore, right? An enlightened being doesn't experience that. They are beyond this. They're experiencing unconditional joy, unconditional happiness. Before they ever woke up in the morning, they were already happy. And now when they see it's sunny outside, it's like, sweet, I'm going to go hiking. And now they go take a shower. And when they come out, they see it's raining. And it's like, oh, it's raining. Okay, well, I guess I'll stay home and read a book, or I'll go to the mall, or maybe I'll call my friends. They can come over and we can spend some time. I'll make some dinner for them. You can maintain your happiness because your happiness wasn't based on the sun. So when the sun goes away, you can still maintain your happiness. So what the Buddha is talking about here, about eliminating excitement, he's talking about eliminating the conditionality of that excitement, that you can only be excited when certain conditions are met. He's guiding you to get to a point where you're going to have unconditional happiness, unconditional joy. But if you allow your mind to get the temporary happiness, then that means the painful feelings are waiting for you right around the corner. So let's say, for example, you get a brand new job. It's the perfect job, the perfect salary, the perfect company, the perfect coworkers. Everything's wonderful. And you get so excited about this job and you welcome that excitement into your mind. Well, 3 years later, when the company goes out of business and you get laid off, you'll be angry. You'll be frustrated because your mind could only be excited if you had that job. Whereas if you get that new job and you're like, sweet, I got this new job. This is going to be wonderful. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to get to spend some time with some great coworkers. This is going to be outstanding. And now you go in there and you do a really great job. And then 3 years later, they lay you off. And it's like, okay, I understand. I appreciate the fact that I was able to work here for 3 years. Thank you for this opportunity. And now you go find another job, understanding that this job is not permanent. It is impermanent. But if you allow your mind to welcome in that excitement, then that means the painful feelings are going to be waiting for you right around the corner. So you need to be able to understand the conditionality of conditional pleasant feelings so that way you can let go of the temporary happiness in order to be able to get to the permanent happiness, the permanent joy. That's what the Buddha is guiding you to. So if someone does not welcome in the excitement, they don't welcome it, they don't remain holding to it, excitement is eliminated, meaning the conditional excitement is eliminated. And then there's no excitement in the mind, there's no conditional excitement, there's no obsession where your mind's longing, yearning, and holding on to that job, and you're so obsessed with that job. You understand, like, hey, there's many jobs in the world. Sure, I enjoy this one, and for the last 3 years, it's been wonderful to work at this place, but there's other jobs out there too, and I can enjoy those too. It's not just this job that I'll enjoy these over here too. Because if you have obsession, then that means you can only be happy when you have this job, right? So that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see here. And then by doing this, you're releasing the fetter or the pollution of sensual desire. And this is an individual called a lone dweller, meaning that you're free. Your mind's liberated. That's what he's essentially getting to. By eliminating and abandoning this craving, the mind is actually free. And this is what you can actually get to, where you can just always be happy. You can always be joyful. If I have this job or this job or this job or this job, I can still be happy. But if you can only be happy with this one job, that job is not permanent. So you're going to end up in the painful feelings, right? Or if you can only be happy with that chocolate cake and you can only be enjoying that restaurant if they have your chocolate cake, that chocolate cake is not permanent. So your mind is bound up. It's dependent on having this chocolate cake, and that means it's not free. Okay, so any questions on this here? Anything you guys would like to ask? Yeah, if you could get a microphone, that'd be great. Sounds like it's already on.
Hello?
Mm-hmm.
What is, sorry, English is not my first language.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't fully understand what is the position of the Buddha or what the Buddha tried to say when trying to, whether to have a partner or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that having a partner, it doesn't have to be necessarily only sexual desire. You can choose to have a partner for other qualities. I always thought that in order, I guess, to be enlightened or to achieve enlightenment, you should not have a partner, or the perception was like, I guess, like, if you, from the Western perspective, is if you want to reach enlightenment, then you cannot become like a monk or like ordained practitioner, and you kind of refuse, obviously, sexual desires, but also engaging in having like a partner, like, I don't know, a husband or wife or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask you what did the Buddha said about kind of having a partner? Like, doesn't necessarily have to be sexual.
Sure. So I'll definitely help you with that question. But let me just first make sure, do you understand that here in this particular discourse, he's using this analogy of a partner to refer to the longing, yearning in the mind, the craving? He's not actually talking about a physical partner.
I see the analogy, but I honestly thought he was talking about an actual partner.
Yeah, he's not talking about an actual
Okay.
partner here. Because whether you have a life partner or not, that's a choice for you to make. The Buddha's not going to tell you whether you should or shouldn't have a life partner, because in order to get to enlightenment, you need to eliminate your craving, your longing, your yearning, your wanting or expecting things and craving permanence. Well, there's some people in the world that are not interested in having a partner, and they're going to be single, and that's the way they're going to live their life. And they can easily get to enlightenment that way, right? Not easily, but they're going to be able to make their way to enlightenment. But there's other people who are interested in having a partner, and they would like to have a wife or a husband or a life partner or what have you. And you can still get to enlightenment that way too. And it actually can be helpful in some respects, because if you have a craving, desire, attachment in your mind, if let's just say somebody's longing, yearning for a partner and they don't have one, well, there's two ways to approach this. You can train your mind to cut that off and let it go, to be able to eliminate it out of the mind and just be like, you know what? I don't know, let's just say somebody's older in life, the idea of them getting a partner at that late age, maybe they're not interested in doing that, and they're just going to be single for the rest of their life, and they've come to terms with that, and they're completely comfortable and content with that. So that's one way to eliminate the longing, yearning for a partner, is to cut it off and let it go and decide, I'm not going to do it, and I'll be just fine being single. Another way to eliminate a craving, desire, attachment for a partner is to actually get one. If you actually get a partner, you'll actually extinguish that craving, because you actually have it now. But now, as you have a partner, you're going to need to be able to learn how to love this person unconditionally. Because oftentimes what people are doing is they're falling in love with people and out of love with people. This isn't actually love. You can't fall in love and out of love with people once you understand what true love is. This is one of the lack of wisdoms that the unenlightened mind has. Or if you think that love hurts and love is painful, that's actually not the love that's causing that. That's the craving, desire, attachment. So if somebody is going to get to enlightenment while having a partner, they would have already had their partner, they would be in a relationship. If they're going to have sexual relations, they're going to have sexual relations. If it's a opposite gender relationship, they're going to potentially have kids or whatever it is. But then eventually, as they're training their mind more and more, they will eliminate sexual contact. because you can get to the second stage of enlightenment and still be having sexual contact, but you're still going to have agitation and frustration to a certain degree, because you can do all the other work on the path to enlightenment and still be having a sexual relationship, and you're going to be quite peaceful in all parts of your life. But in some situations, you'll be able to have sex. In some situations, you can't. And when you can't have sex, you'll be agitated and frustrated. You probably know that feeling, like when your mind really wants it, but you can't have it, right? So as long as you have the desire for sex, you're going to be having this discontentedness. But eventually, after you've had a partner for a period of time and you guys have been there, done that, you've had sex plenty of times, you've gotten to a certain point where you're seeing more and more peacefulness come into your mind from these teachings, there's actually something better than sex, which is enlightenment in this peaceful and joyful mental state. And you'll start seeing more and more of those qualities start to shine through, because it's not like you're unenlightened for 10 years and then there's a flip of a switch and then you're enlightened. Instead, it's the gradual improvement to your mind, and you start seeing more and more of the qualities of enlightenment shining through, and you're going to start appreciating that peacefulness that you experience more than the sex. It's hard to imagine that when you're young, but it's actually true. There's something better than sex. So after you've been with a partner for however long, and you and your partner are probably training your mind with these teachings, and you start seeing more and more of the peacefulness, you've been there, done that, had sex many times, you guys are probably going to look at each other and be like, yeah, we don't need to do that anymore. And now you basically are like best friends. Like me and my wife, we've been together for almost 20 years, 19 years at this point. And of course, when we were younger, when we were first getting together, we had all kinds of sex, right? But then eventually we got to a point where we're just like, yeah, we don't need to do that anymore. And now we're living with our best friend, right? And now we're having such a great experience. We don't argue. We're not upset with each other. We don't want anything from each other. We don't expect anything from each other. We're completely free of all of that. So there's kind of like an evolutional process. But for somebody that actually gets to enlightenment, they're not going to be having sex any longer. But that's not because there's anything wrong with sex or sex is bad. It's just that as long as you have sensual desire in your mind, you can't be happy all the time, because you're only going to be happy when you have sex. And then when you're not having sex, the mind will be frustrated or agitated. So oftentimes younger people, which you look pretty young, will make your way up to the second stage of enlightenment and then do all the other work on the path and kind of hang out in that stage for a while, be having your sexual relationship. You'll be having quite of a peaceful life in that stage of enlightenment. And then at some point you're like, okay, well, let's go farther. And now you and your partner will agree that this is a good time for you to do that. And then you'll move on from there. And then you'll see that the peace and the joy just becomes more and more profound. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. I think I got confused by the lone dweller.
Yeah.
Because I think lone dweller and the image that I got from Buddhism,
yeah,
I thought that it was kind of not compatible to have like a partner and try to achieve enlightenment. So I'm very confused when I see, people that have partners.
Yeah.
So because I thought it wasn't compatible.
So ordained practitioners, I'm not ordained, by the way. I'm a household practitioner. I live the same life as you, so that way I can help you to be able to understand how to apply these teachings in your day-to-day life. Ordained practitioners, they're supposed to walk away from those relationships because it's more conducive for them to be able to get to enlightenment, because they don't have to cultivate the wisdom to be able to learn how to navigate this relationship. So it's a different lifestyle, but that's not the only way to get to enlightenment. You can actually get to enlightenment as a household practitioner too, but you have a lot more to navigate in terms of your possessions and your relationships and stuff like that. You need to cultivate a lot of wisdom. So since this language partner and lone dweller is a little bit challenging for you, one of the ways you might think of this is what the Buddha is saying is one who has craving, their mind is dependent. They have these dependencies. One whose mind doesn't have cravings, their mind is independent. That's what he's saying here, is that it's independent, that you're not reliant on this craving for happiness. Because when your mind has craving, you are dependent on that craving in order to get your happiness. And you can only be happy when that craving is fulfilled. But when your mind doesn't have craving, you are independent. The mind is independently peaceful and joyful. So he's using the word partner and lone dweller here, but you might think of it this way. It might help you better. Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had another question, but this is out of curiosity. It's not related to the chapter.
Sure.
How do we know that the Pali Canon is actually the words of the Buddha, which I understand there was only oral tradition, but when he was alive, so it was probably written. It's a bit like the Bible, right? It's probably written by other people.
Sure.
Is there any way of
So what you do is when you're learning the Pali Canon and you're studying his teachings, you never believe those teachings. You're not accepting it on face value. You're not just accepting that the print and the ink is his actual words. Instead, you take that in intellectually to be able to learn it. Then you reflect on it to verify whether it's true or false. That's why I give lots of examples when I'm teaching so that you guys can independently verify it through your own reflection. But then you start practicing it. And when you start practicing it and you're training your mind the way that's described in the Pali Canon, and you see you're getting more and more peaceful, more and more joyful. There are certain situations you were once in where you got angry and frustrated and your mind doesn't experience that anymore. You'll know that it's these teachings that are leading to that, and you'll know that this is the truth. So the way you cut through that impermanence is you don't believe the teachings. You independently verify them for yourself. So that's the first big one. The second one is by the time you get to enlightenment, you will never forget the teachings that it took for you to get to enlightenment. Your mind has essentially been upgraded to a new operating system like a computer, right? And once your mind is upgraded to that new operating system, to that wisdom, you will never forget that wisdom that it took for you to get to enlightenment. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were countless people that had gotten to enlightenment. And shortly after his death, 500 of them got together and they documented his teachings, and they all agreed that, yes, this is what he actually taught. But from 2,500 years ago, when they first started documenting the teachings to now, surely there's been changes to the Pali Canon, because it would be naive of us to think that this document is exactly the same from 2,500 years ago. So what cuts through that is you not believing the teachings. By investigating, examining the teachings, by learning them intellectually, then you reflect on them, whether they're true or they're false, through your own direct experience. And then by practicing the teachings, integrating them into your life, and you see that they actually work to improve your mind, then you'll know, aha, these are the true teachings, because it's working to improve my mind and my life. My relationships are improving, and you can see this is the truth. And that's how you cut through that impermanence. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Where are you from, by the way?
Spain?
Oh, okay. Hola. You have a question, Keisha? Yeah. By the way, I have the first book in Spanish over here. There's one more version, and you can download it for free too. Mm-hmm.
How do you work towards your financial goals without the craving when you're dependent on a certain amount of money to fund your life?
You need to do it gradually through wise decision making. Early on like this, you're going to have craving for money because your mind wants that new car, that new house, or whatever it is that you're using the money for. So you need to be able to see when your mind is longing, yearning. That's the mindfulness from the Eightfold Path that you're studying. That when you see your mind longing, yearning, then you apply right effort to cut that off and let it go, and don't allow your mind to do that. So it's almost like riding a horse. Have you ever ridden a horse? No? Okay. Well, when you ride a horse, there's reins, there's like ropes on the horse. And when the horse starts running, you pull it back. And then this bit kind of like stops it from running, right? Because when you go out on a walk with a horse, it'll usually be fairly calm. But once it knows it's coming back to the barn, it gets really excited. And it usually wants to run to the barn because it realizes that's when it gets to take a break, right? So usually you have to pull the reins back so it doesn't take off and run to the barn. So this is the same thing that you do with your mind, that when you see your mind pulling towards something, you pull it back and you restrain it. And over time, if you do this enough, your mind won't pull like that. But you need to do consistent training in meditation. Then you've got your generosity. You've learned about these things. And then in your day-to-day life, wherever you see your mind pulling, you restrain it and pull it back. And over a consistent long-term period, the mind will let go of its craving. It's not going to be an immediate thing. Something like money is not going to be an immediate thing. So one of the things you can do with your money is you can practice generosity with it. That'll train your mind to let go of the craving for it. So you need to do that from the middle way, of course. But if your mind is longing, yearning for money, and you get so happy when your bank account balance is here and you get frustrated or angry when it's down here, you're going to need to give and share your resources with other people in order to be able to help you to let go of that craving. So, purchasing things and, using your money to share resources with others, or even just giving some cash. And you don't need to do it excessively, because if you did it excessively, you wouldn't have what you need. But if you never share, your mind's going to be quite selfish. So you need to find this middle way where you can consistently be practicing generosity with your money, so that not only are you cutting off the craving in your day-to-day life, but you have a regular practice of giving. So if, let's just say, I think you've heard me say this before, if you were going to give $500 once a year to an orphanage, that's not going to be as beneficial, because you're just giving once a year. Instead, you'd like to give like $1 a day. And each day you're having to let go, let go, let go, let go. This is why here in Thailand, you'll see a lot of donation boxes everywhere you go, like, probably Lotus, you've been to Lotus, or like different restaurants and different places you go, there's donation boxes everywhere. Because let's just say you're going to give 100 baht in a day, right? You'd probably like to put 10 baht in this donation box, and 20 baht in that donation box, and 10 baht in this donation box, and 20 baht in that donation box. And then over the course of your day, you've had to let go like 5 times or 10 times. This is helping your mind to let go of the craving for money. So yes, you need to do breathing mindfulness meditation. You need to cut off in the moment when you see your mind craving and restrain your mind, but you also need to practice generosity regularly, where you're training your mind to let go. And that's how you get rid of a craving for money. Yep. Okay. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'll do is just end here by thanking you guys. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that. You can see our bulletin board over there. We have classes tomorrow, and then we have classes on Wednesday as well. They're also on our website, and you can also talk with me and let me know if you have questions. So whatever you do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.